So what if the hardest part of learning, the actual doing, wasn't something you had to figure out all by yourself at home? What if you had an expert right there with you? Well, that's the big idea behind the flipped classroom. And let me tell you, it's a model that's totally changing the game for how we learn practical skills. Let's dive in and see how it all works.
All right, here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll get straight on what flipped learning even is. Then we'll put it right next to the traditional classroom to see the huge difference. After that, we'll look at some real-world examples, unpack the biggest benefits, and finally figure out what it takes to really make this thing work.
Let's just start with this one simple but kind of powerful question. What if we took the most passive part of learning, the lecture, and just made that the homework? And then what if the toughest part, the actual practice, was what you did in the classroom with your teacher right there to help you out?
And that question right there gets to the absolute heart of flipped learning. It's all about completely rethinking where the different parts of learning happen. So here's the deal. Put simply, flipped learning is where students get their first dose of new info at home, maybe by watching some videos or doing some reading. This frees up all that super valuable class time for the stuff that really matters, actually applying what you've learned, getting your hands dirty, and getting instant feedback from your instructor.
Seriously, if you remember just one thing, make it this. Lecture at home, practice in class. This simple switch is the engine that drives the whole flipped classroom model. And trust me, the results are pretty profound. Okay, so to really get why it's called flipped, let's do a direct comparison. This is usually where the big aha moment kicks in. You can see the reversal perfectly here, right? In a traditional class, the teacher lectures, and then you're sent home to struggle through the homework all by yourself. But in the flipped model, you learn the basics at home, on your own time. That way, you can use class time to practice and get help right when you get stuck. No more banging your head against the wall alone at midnight. So the theory is cool and all, but what does this actually look like in the real world? Let's jump into 4 totally different examples of flipped learning in action. Okay, picture a civil engineering student. Before class, they're at home watching a video that breaks down the whole theory of concrete mix ratios. Then, when they get to class, there's no boring lecture. Nope, they head straight to the lab to get their hands dirty and actually prepare a real mix. And the result? It's huge. The student doesn't just know the theory anymore. They've actually built a real hands-on skill. They've connected the numbers on a page to the real feel and texture of the material. Now, let's take a nursing student. They read up on all the patient care procedures the night before. Then, class time is all about the simulation lab, where they get to practice those techniques on medical dummies, with an instructor right there giving them feedback in the moment. The impact here is just massive. It's all about confidence. Because they've practiced in a safe space where it's okay to make mistakes, they're way more prepared and a lot less nervous when they face their first real patient. How about an agriculture student? Maybe they use a cool app on their tablet to learn all about different crop diseases. Then they go into the greenhouse for class, where they have to identify diseases on actual plants and come up with a treatment plan. See, this isn't about memorizing flashcards for a test. This is about building the genuine skill to diagnose and solve the real-world problems they're going to face every day in their careers. And for our last one, let's look at a hotel management student. They study customer service theory and case studies at home, but in class, it's all about role-playing, taking turns being the front desk agent and, the really difficult customer. And this leads directly to better communication. You just can't learn these kinds of people skills from a book. You have to practice them. And the flipped classroom actually makes the time for you to do just that. So we've seen how it works across all these different fields. But why is it so darn effective, especially for skill-based learning? Let's break down the key advantages. Well, the benefits are so powerful because it's all about making learning an active thing, not a passive one. You're not just sitting there listening, you're doing, you're problem solving. And a huge perk is that you can learn the theory at your own pace. Need to rewatch that confusing part of the video? Go for it. You can't rewind a live lecture. This active, self-paced approach leads to way better understanding, real practical skills, and just gets students way more engaged. It's basically tailor-made for any kind of skill-based education. Okay, this all sounds pretty fantastic, I know. But it's not quite as simple as just throwing a video online and calling it a day. For the flip to be a huge success, a few key things really need to be in place. Success here really comes down to a partnership. First, teachers have to create really good, clear learning materials for home.
Second, the students have to do their part and actually do the pre-class work. If they don't, the whole in-class part falls apart. And finally, that amazing class time has to be really well planned with activities that are practical and engaging. When those three things come together, that's when the magic happens.
So that leaves us with a pretty big question. By shifting the whole focus away from just listening to a lecture and towards actively doing things, the flipped classroom puts skill development right at the center of education. So you have to wonder, is this the future of how we learn practical skills? Based on everything we've seen, it's making a really, really strong case.